limiting presidential terms. No. My boy, forget about that. Forget about that.
You are now tuning into BaisWave.
Welcome everybody to another episode of BaisWave's Global Base podcast. My name is Altay Karakurt, and today I'm hosting Dr. Nkwi to talk about African gerontocracies. But before we get into all of that, can you briefly introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, it's always a pleasure for me introducing myself and talking to audience. I am Walter Nkwi. I hold a PhD from University of Leiden, and I teach African history, African politics, African philosophies and religions since 2019. I teach in BaisWave and I teach in Leiden, and I'm also the coordinator of African studies in the BaisWave, Bachelor International Studies.
Okay, thank you very much. So today's topic is African gerontocracies. For the people who are not familiar with the term gerontocracy, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, a gerontocracy is a society, state, or system in which old people have the most power. Now, some people could argue that a lot of countries in the world are led by old leaders, but what makes Africa unique in this context is the fact that it has some of the oldest leaders leading some of the youngest countries. So why does Africa have so many gerontocracies?
I love it because it has become like a buzzword. Africa is synonymous to all leaders. And there's always an explanation, and I give an explanation from a really African-centered perspective. Africa is one of those continents that wisdom is expressed through proverbs. Amongst the Igbos of Eastern Nigeria, proverbs are like palm oil in which we eat yams. And I will take you to an African proverb. That is why I'm introducing you to proverbs. What an old man can see sitting down, a young man can never see, even standing on a mountain. That is a very typical proverb from the Igbo society and across Africa. So African gerontocracy, which people see to be somehow abnormal, is very normal in African context because wisdom is seen and expressed through age. So an old man is an encyclopedia. And if I take you back to my Burkinabe historian, Joseph Kizibo, once an old man dies, a museum or an archive is burned because age is, of course, in every society. I cannot just take Africa, in all societies, age is something that we respect, but it goes with wisdom. But African political elites are so smart that they can adapt their own type of democracy the way they want. So to them, living older in power shows that you have wisdom. Living older in power shows that you know your state, you know the system, and that is why you see that. I come from Cameroon. Cameroon president is 93 years old. My father died at 94. This guy became president at the age of 46. So once they are into power, they don't see anybody wiser than them. They see themselves as God chosen. They see themselves as messiahs. I can take you all across. On a journey, if I take you to Ghana, Nkrumah led Ghana to independence. But after independence, Nkrumah became a messiah. And so you find that after independence, most African countries gained independence in 1960. By 1966, they made nonsense of the constitutions and now started going in now to this what we call gerontocracy. Look at Tinubu in Nigeria. Tinubu is as old as me. If you look at Ngema of Equatorial Guinea. And to add to gerontocracy, once they are into this and they become so old, they don't see anybody to succeed them apart of their sons. So they move from gerontocracy now to monarchies. It's about getting your son to sit down where or to succeed you. The only person that can succeed you is your son. And now there's a trend in Africa which is very dangerous, very inimical to the political state, where they start to bring sons to come into power. So to cut a long story short, anchor gerontocracy in Africa is exceptionalism. It's actually that Africans believe in the old age, and that when you are old, wisdom is expressed through that age. And what an old man can see sitting down, a young man will not see standing on a mountain. But I will give you a twist to it, since we're talking about Africa. Africa now has joined, have entered the bandwagon of digital humanities, or call it social media. But those who can actually handle the social media are young guys. So this thing will not hold in the long run because these guys, I call them keyboard professors. These guys, young guys, they can manipulate at all levels.
So now they have the power.
Exactly, they have the power. and the old cannot simply use it.
No, they don't know how to. Yeah.
They don't need it. So that is it.
One of the reasons why African gerontocracies gained a lot of attention, especially last year in 2025, was because of the protests against fraudulent elections and the violent reactions to those protests by governments. So, what are the methods used by gerontocracies to maintain their power?
Yeah, that's another very excellent question. I will take you to Tanzania first. Tanzania, unfortunately, lost Magufuli to COVID-19. And this lady, I've forgotten the name, sorry. This lady took over, constitutionally took over. Young lady, robust, and made a lot of amendments, called them olive branches. Olive branch is a peace branch to opposition. So he actually reconciled the opposition leaders and brought everybody to the table. As elections now were approaching, she embarked on arresting all opposition leaders. Almost all were arrested. And now positioned his daughter, sons-in-laws, really uncles to very strategic positions in
So a lot of nepotism going on.
I think if there was another word to use more than nepotism, it could be used, because this one is exaggerated nepotism. Now, the youths in Africa are very robust, and the youths make up 2/3 of the population. They started striking, started going onto the streets. And since the military is like one part of the state in Africa, the African state or the African political elite shows how legitimate they are only when they have to use
Force.
So there was really a lot. So, and that is why you see this type of protest. They use the military to maintain themselves in power. Once the arms of the weak civilians are broken off, they stay back in power. So essentially, they use this military.
So coercion and force.
And exceptionally, they also used some political elite in rigging the elections. The rigging elections are not rigged by the incumbent, but the elections are rigged by the friends that he has put around him. So we live in a patronage system. It's very fashionable in Africa, very fashionable. And so because of patronage system, he brings all this neo-patrimonialism. He brings all these guys around him. Of course, they are paid, they are given privileges that other people cannot get. And these are those who rig the elections. Why do they rig the elections? To continuously keep these old guys. If these old people are out of power, these guys will not survive. They will not survive. So they have to do everything to maintain the incumbent. If the incumbent goes, or the privileges go, everything goes. It's just practical common sense. And then the aspect of ethnicity to place it, because you come from this ethnic group, and once you are from a particular ethnic group, you appoint leaders or top ministers from that ethnic group.
So ethnic tensions also play a big role.
Exactly.
Then you mentioned neo-patrimonialism. So one common characteristic of all leaders in Africa is that they're usually corrupt, and they tend to use government funds for self-enrichment. So how do you think African countries' economies affect the authoritarian regimes of their old leaders? How do they use government funds to enrich themselves? How do they use clientelism or co-optation?
That I will answer you just in 2 words: primitive accumulation. What is primitive accumulation? If you read people who have done real political theory or science in Africa, either you read Jean-Francois Bayard, if you read Stephen Ellis, if you read Chabal, Delors, you find that this accumulation, that is actually what goes into what we call corruption. Because there are 2 examples I will give you. In Cameroon, I think was it 2018 or 2017, a minister was caught with money stacked like books in the house. And in that money, what do you find? You find 500 euro notes. And immediately, the wife was trying to hide the evidence by burning the money. What do you do with money that is stacked like books? You can never finish it. For your lifetime, you can never finish that type of money. The same feat was discovered in Gabon when the minister was caught with, 12 suitcases in a hillocks with money. And all this money is what could be pumped into the economy for the benefit of the economy. But it is not. And most of the time, either they stack this money in their homes or they send this money to foreign banks. This affects the economy a lot. And they pretend to you that they go out to borrow, but they always borrow anyway. But then they borrow on interest. And at the end of the day, there's still a lot of money that has to be paid.
So their debt just keeps piling up.
Yes. It is never all the same to all head of states. I remember the first president of Cameroon was Amadou Ahidjo, and he served money in Swiss bank. That was the time that Swiss bank was so fashionable. People had to serve money in Switzerland because they felt that Switzerland was safe or whatever. I think in terms of Cameroon currency, it was about 9 milliard. 9 milliard should be getting up to billions of euro. Really billions of euro. What happened with that money was that he served the money not as Cameroon head of state, but he served the money as Amadu Ahijo. So after him, Biya, who came to power, could not take that money. Yeah, because Ahijo served the money in his name, not in the name of the state. You understand what I mean? So most African presidents are tempted to take this money, stack them in foreign banks, stack them in home, do whatever they want to do. This has a lot of effect on the economy, very negative.
Because that money could have been spent on public investments, infrastructure.
There are no roads. Have you been to Africa?
No.
Oh my God. I think I will need to take you to Cameroon. No, you need to. Honestly, you need to take holidays to Cameroon, take holidays to Nigeria, take holidays to Togo or Ghana. There are no roads. There are footpaths. Really footpaths. The first shock you'll find will be potholes on the road. You will not even be able to drive for 1 kilometer. That's what you'll find here, because you never operated here with potholes. You don't even see it. They don't even exist. But these are infrastructure that the African presidents have the money to use it to do that. They don't do it. But then the West is also very conscious of these guys, because IMF and World Bank will say, come, we have loans to give you. Right? IMF have no money. They call them special drawing rights. They give you money. They give you the money. And so Biya can rule Cameroon for 43 years or 40 years. But what is going to happen is that for the 40 years, the real thing that is happening in the country is the country is living on borrowing. It's about borrowing. So it does happen.
Okay. I also want to talk about continental alliances and partnerships in Africa, like the African Union or the Economic Community of West Africa and Central African States. What do you think the role of continental alliances and partnerships should be in limiting the power of old leaders in Africa?
No. I will tell you no. Talk about something different, not limiting. Because when you look at Africa, and going down south, you have SADC, SADCC, you have East African Community, then you have Economic States of West Africa, ECOWAS, ECOWAS is Economic States of West Africa, call it that way. Then you have CEMAC, which is Cameroon, Chad, Equatorial Guinea, I think Gabon and Congo also.
So shouldn't they be preventing the corruption that we talked about?
No, because who are those who create them?
The same leaders.
The same leaders. If you go to OAU, or you have been transformed now into AU, they are the same people.
So then what's the point of creating these communities and alliances?
No, the claim is about economic growth, is about free circulation of people. But to me, it's just a white elephant type of project. Because if you leave Cameroon to enter Equatorial Guinea, it's a big hazard. You don't easily enter Equatorial Guinea. If you leave Cameroon for Central African Republic, I've seen Central African Republic citizens being harassed in Cameroon. So there's even no free mobility, because like I always discuss with you people, you still find these colonial boundaries still there. So why do you talk about CEMAC and you leave Cameroon to go down to Equatorial Guinea? There's a border, you have to give your passport, your yellow vaccination, the same entering Gabon, the same entering Chad. So it's the same story. And you only find a difference in the West African state. Because if you see ECOWAS, you can move from Nigeria to Dakar. You can drive from Nigeria to Dakar. You have no problem. Because Cameroon is not part of ECOWAS. If I travel with a Nigerian to Dakar, the Nigerian will pass very freely, but I will need a visa. And the Nigerian cannot even say good morning in French. No. So ECOWAS would have been one of the success stories of these blocks we are talking about. Because ECOWAS is made out of Anglophone, Francophones, and even Lusophone. Because I think Cabo Verde was a Portuguese colony. But when it comes to practical politics, limiting presidential terms, my boy, forget about that. Yeah, you could, for example, look at ADDI, Africa Diaspora Development Institute. It is a virtual platform with millions of people. You can join it and you see what they're looking for.
So anybody can join?
Anybody can join. If you put your laptop and just put in ADDI, you will see where to join it.
So what did they do then?
No, they are talking about the continental market. They want to raise passports. They want to do away with boundaries. They also have seminars. You can join their talks anytime you want to. I'm a member.
The other thing is, we also can't generalize and say that every African country has old leaders. For instance, in 2024, Senegalese Bassirou Diomaye Faye became Africa's youngest democratically elected president. Do you think that his success can be replicated in other African countries to replace old leaders? If so, How?
No, I could tell you one or two things about Senegal. Senegal is one exceptional French colony, and I think its exceptions is because there's really no natural resources. They have nothing except sand. There's nothing. There's nothing in Senegal. I've been to Senegal several times. There's nothing there except sand. And the reason for Faye winning the elections and winning it so well is actually that Senegal respects their constitution. It's one of the countries in Africa that has a lot of respect for its constitution. Okay, if you leave Faye and you go down to South Botswana. Botswana is a success story, a real success story, because even before the reintroduction of multi-party politics, I think Botswana was already very, very okay there. So it becomes now something very difficult to say that another country will replicate. Take, for example, Cameroon. Cameroon is a very interesting country to study, which I will say anybody should study Cameroon politics. President in 43, all those around it, there's no vice president. The Senate president is old. The president of call it the speaker in the House of Assembly is as old as the president. Where do you see a young man of less than 30 or 40 coming to power? You won't see it. Senegal has very strong opposition, very strong. And that's one thing that Senegal has that most African countries don't have. It was very difficult for Macky Sall to break through to break through the opposition, and so he had to bow out. So to me, I don't see the success of Senegal being replicated anywhere. They really have to rework the constitution before we can see something coming.
Okay. So at the beginning of the interview, you also mentioned how Africa has recently seen its youth playing an active role in politics. Examples of this include the youth-led protests in Madagascar in 2025, protests in Gambia, Kenya, and Uganda in 2024. Do you think that these events have reduced the legitimacy of gerontocracies in other African countries, emboldening other young populations to resist the power of their old leaders?
It has. It has. And even if it has not, those who are sitting up there, call it in the political towers, they really know that deep down in them, they're not legitimate. Deep down in them, they're not. Let me move you out of there and come to Cameroon. There was election in Cameroon in 2025. Because of the social media, remember I told you, because social media, this saying that what an old man can see sitting down, a young man will not see standing up. But the young men lie on the bed now and they see more than those who are even sitting down as old people. Because elections in Cameroon, as they were counting the votes, social media was already announcing results in polls. It was clear at the end that Bakary Chiruma had won the elections. It was very clear. Chiruma has won the elections. To whoever, it was clear. But what happened? The attempt of another layer which Bia's government has put, calling the Vote Counting Commission. And the Vote Counting Commission should be those who can count very well. But they seem never to count. Because they say 1, 2, 3, and then they jump to 6, 6, 7, they jump to 11. And then Bia won. But what happened? All the key areas in Cameroon were militarized, heavily militarized. And that is how the whole thing died down. African youths are a threat to these dictators. And I don't have any doubt that one day these guys will give way. Because what happened in Romania, let me take you to Romania. In 1989, Nicolas Ceausescu sent out the military to kill. And the military turned and looked at him and he said, no, we'll not kill people again. We have overkilled the youths. And at the end, he was overthrown. So change is the only constant. They tell us in physics, change is the only constant. And no matter how these gerontocrats are doing or trying to hold on to power and think that youth will not have space, I still see that the youth will have space.
Okay, well, those are all the questions I have for today. Dr. Nkwi, thank you very much for joining us today and providing us with your insights. We hope to see you again sometime.
Thank you.